I believe I have a treat for you today. We're off to Croatia, yes, in the summer, when the weather is beautiful, and we're going to meet with Dejan Pavlinović, one of Croatia's preeminent haiku poets. He's going to read from a couple of his solo works, one of which has just launched. Yes, you are one of the first people to hear this work. It's called Lifelines. More of that in a minute. Hello, I'm Patricia, and this is the Poetry Pcast. You are most welcome here. As I said, Dejan Pavlinović has come along to read from Down the Milky Way and his most recent, just published work, Lifelines. Details on how to purchase them will be in the show notes on the website. You're going to find out a little bit about him in the chat we have, but let me fill in a few gaps. Like, he's a member of an indie band, which frankly came as no surprise to me. But if you'd like to catch up with the band, I'll put a link to one of their songs, which is on YouTube, in the show notes. While you're over there, you can subscribe to the Poetry P channel if you're not already. He's also on the editorial team for Iris Haiku magazine, that's based in Croatia. And I'll put a link about some information on that in the show notes too. So as I said, you'll hear more about him in the chat, and I'll add his full bio to the show notes. But as I read Dejan's work and listened to him on this recording, I couldn't help but be reminded of a quotation by Shiki, which he originally used about Takebana Akemi. You'll probably have heard me use it in full in the first of the Tanker podcasts this month. That's episode 36 of this series. I'm going to play with it slightly here so it fits my purpose. With regard to sight, sound, and touch, there is nothing that he does not include in his haiku. That's how I felt anyway, after reading and listening to Dejan. I hope you will enjoy the reading and perhaps go ahead and buy his book or books. For now, let's go and say hi to Dejan.
Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome back to the Poetry P podcast. You're not your first time. You were here last time with your friends Tomislav Marutic and, of course, Michael Dudley.
Yes, that's true. So thank you for inviting me again. It's really a pleasure to be here again, and at the same time, I would like to welcome your audience who is watching and listening, of course.
Thank you very much. Now, as you know, initially I invited you back to read to us on your own from your book, which was published in 2016, Down the Milky Way. But by happy coincidence, since we started talking about doing this and getting ourselves organized, you have published another book, Lifelines, which I was highly honored to get a preview of. Thank you very much. So today, Dejan, we're going to have a reading from both of them, a double pleasure for us.
Yeah, great.
But we're going to do it in chronological order. I'm going to start with Down the Milky Way. But before we get going, I wanted to read to everybody what George Swede said on the cover of this book, because I think when we get going and we get into the reading and we chat between ourselves, people are going to forget that you're not a native English speaker. And George actually said, "I'm amazed at how deftly Dejan Pavlinović uses his second language to create poems that resonate with the joy of being alive." And more than that, if I remember rightly, English is not your only second language. You speak fluent German as well. Am I right?
Ja, das klappt, das stimmt. Yes, I studied English and German, so I'm an English and German teacher. I've been using both languages, well, practically and literally every day. English in the last, 10, 15 years, mostly in school as an English teacher. German before that, but now I mostly use German as during my Pula guide tours, since I work as a part-time tour guide during the summer season, which is, well, just started. But there is a third language I'm fluent with as well.
Okay.
Yes, and that's Dutch, because I spent some part of my life, my early childhood years, or better say mid-childhood years in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. My parents used to work there, so I spent 7 years in Rotterdam. It was a great time, and I actually speak Dutch with a Rotterdam accent, so at least the others say so. And I'm still in touch with Holland. I frequently go there. I have a lot of friends, so that would be my third, let's say, foreign language, which
Oh.
I have been using, well, on a regular basis.
Well, you know what? That probably means you do quite well over here in Switzerland, because you can handle the German element of the Swiss German with the accent of the Dutch, which gets you fairly close to having the correct accent, I reckon, over here.
Well, I hope so. Or although the Schwitz Deutsch is a tough one, I would have to say.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think you just have to live amongst it and try and sort of immerse yourself in it, you know. But you've got a head start because you've got those two other languages. So you've got a better start than me. Anyway, let's get back to Down the Milky Way, which you published in around about 2016, I think. And the foreword was written by one of my idols, Jane Reichhold, which means, Dejan, that this is a very special book because it must be one of the last books she would have reviewed, because she, if I remember rightly, sadly left us that year.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
So you're highly honored.
Yes, it's really a privilege to, well, to have such a great author, and as you mentioned, idol and a role model who supported me and who liked the poems when I got in touch with her, just out of the blue, to be honest. And she really dedicated her time and spent time reading it and giving a short review, and then she she was also willing to write a foreword. Well, the poems from Milky Way are actually are covering the period from 2007 until 2016 when it was published. This was the period actually where I started to write haiku in 2007. Besides Jane Reichhold, I have to mention also a prominent Croatian poet and the founding editor of Iris Haiku magazine, and one of the leading promoters of haiku poetry in Croatia, Đurđa Vukolić-Rožić, who also wrote the afterword. And then George Sweet, that you mentioned, and Chenu Liu, they contributed with their short blurbs, and I was and still am really grateful for the support of such respectable authors and poets. The book also received very good reviews, among others in Frog Pond and Blight Spirit, if we talk about some prominent magazines. So everything, all in all, it kind of showed me, well, let's say that I was on the right track, and it motivated me to immerse deeper into the beautiful world of haiku.
Brilliant. Yes,
Yeah.
I was going to say to you, I mean, other than Jane, you obviously had some very decent reviewers on the book cover and writing within it. Now, Jane did say, you've mentioned her foreword there. She said anyone interested in improving their own work would do well to study Dejan Pavlinovic's haiku. So you know what? We're going to follow Jane's advice and have a listen. So I'll be highly honored if you do a reading, please.
I will. If I may just give a short intro, just to kind of give a little flair. Well, the first book was for me special, and most of the poems concerning the topics. In other words, there's a significant amount of those related to children, babies, childhood, fatherhood, and motherhood as well, which is not accidental, because during the period of composing and assembling the poems, my two boys were born. So I suppose it was quite obvious that many poems were related to those topics. And the choice that I made for this first reading, as you will hear, are actually related to those ones. And I will read twice, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
In Croatian and in English. Good. Mliječnom stazom od zvijezde do zvijezde maleni prst. Mliječnom stazom od zvijezde do zvijezde maleni prst. From star to star, down the Milky Way, a little finger. From star to star, down the Milky Way, a little finger. I dalje gladak nakon tisuće poljubaca, obraz djeteta. I dalje gladak nakon tisuće poljubaca, obraz djeteta. Still smooth after thousands of kisses, a child's cheek. Still smooth after thousands of kisses, a child's cheek. Poteče iz majčinih grudi noćna tišina. Poteče iz majčinih grudi noćna tišina. Flowing from mother's breast, nightly silence. Flowing from mother's breast, nightly silence. Here we go.
Thank you. I just want to go back to that first one. Two things. I just wanted to say I love the imagery in that one, from star to star, down the Milky Way, a little finger.
Yes, it's also one of my favorites. Well, among the, if we can make a list, but really one of my favorites, because it brings me right back to the right spot and the right part of the day when this flashed, really. And this was one of the rare ones which was an instant haiku, which doesn't, as you know, doesn't often happen. And it was behind our house on a field, since we live on the suburbs of Pula. And it was dusk, and me and my little boy were walking, and we were listening to all these insects, this beautiful summer orchestra of insects. And then he was showing the stars, and this was kind of image which froze, and the whole emotion. So it's a very dear one to me.
Yeah, I can well imagine. It's lovely. Just in the construction of it, I'm looking at the Croatian and the English. Is there a slight difference in the way it's constructed in the English?
Yes, well observed, because compared with the English version, the second English line, which is down the Milky Way, is the first Croatian one. So, and now you mentioned, when I personally write haiku, since I write equally, I would say, both in English and German. Sometimes English and Croatian. It's quite an interesting merge of the two languages when it comes to translation. So sometimes the first original version is Croatian, and then during the process of the translation, then the translation, the English version, is better, and I go back to the original Croatian and then remake it, or the other way around. So I can't say that I write only in Croatian or only in English, but it's a kind of a merge of both languages. And this transition or translational process is where quite interesting things happen in a linguistical point of view. And concerning the rhythm, the Croatian version functions and sounds much better when it's reversed, as you noticed.
Yeah, I wanted to just come back to you and ask you about that one, and the interplay between translating it, because I'm guessing you translate them yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Except for the Japanese, which we'll come on to a little bit later. But,
Right.
but for this one, it wasn't relevant. But yeah, isn't that interesting that the rhythm dictated that you changed, or I'm presuming it was the rhythm dictated the change from the English to the Croatian.
Yes, that's right. And I think that reading the poems aloud, at least for me, is really important to literally hear the flow, whether it's natural or whether there are some obstacles, and not only to hear it in the mind, but also to pronounce it, and then, well, to make it come alive in the form of the sound. So I think that's really important. Yes, the rhythm as well.
I think it's very important. I often think that when you say it aloud, if you can't get the words out, then you've got something wrong.
Exactly.
Stumble over it somehow, then something you need to go back and think about something else.
That's right.
Anyway, get back on track here. Thank you for those and for that thought. And I have a poem that I'd like to hear you read. Well, I wrote to you and said I'd really like to hear you read a lot more of them, but we don't have the time. So I have picked one out, and I chose it because it's a theme very familiar to haiku writers and readers of haiku, cherry trees. But you've written an original haiku, which I want to come back to afterwards, but you've included a kigo that's delicately included in the poem. It's not a sort of standout kigo like, spring day or whatever. Nicely included within the poem, which I really love to see. I really love that way of writing a kigo into a poem. So I'm going to ask you, you know which one it is, so I'm going to leave that.
All right. U mrzlo jutro na goloj trešnji procvalo sunce. U mrzlo jutro na goloj trešnji procvalo sunce. Frosty morning, on a naked cherry tree, the sun in bloom. Frosty morning, on a naked cherry tree, the sun in bloom.
Now, I mentioned the kigo, so you've got your naked cherry tree. Normally, when we got the cherry tree, we're thinking of spring, but you've sort of made it vaguely ambiguous with your frosty morning, because I know a frosty morning here could be late autumn, could be late winter, early spring. But you've also juxtaposed that with the naked cherry tree and the sun in bloom. So you sort of made a switch for us. Normally expect the cherry tree to be in bloom, and here you have the unexpected, which to me is, what did Jane Reichold say? We should look at your work. Honestly, she didn't. I don't think she specified why, but I think that's possibly why, that you bring the unexpected often into the poem. And I wanted to ask you about that. This poem in particular. Where were you going with the kigo and with the whole poem?
Yes, this is an interesting and in a way special poem, and in a way also before I say a bit more, I have to say that what I found interesting with haiku poems, that they always bring me back to the specific place and time when they were observed or experienced. And as I remember with this one, and this was actually a winter morning. And what I find interesting with this poem is that I didn't want to make it so blunt with the usual cherry trees and the springtime. And this one is actually the cherry tree in itself is in a way combining two seasons, springtime, which is not visible, but it's kind of touchable or somewhere behind, and the winter time when it was actually created. And we are talking about a simple naked cherry tree, and a touch of the sun is always welcome. And it was a beautiful winter morning when it was created. And this ambiguity that you mentioned is something which I also find quite appealing. A touch of mystery or something unspoken. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And now we are going to turn our attention to your new book, Lifelines. So for the benefit of everyone who would be thinking of buying it, tell us a little bit about it and where they can buy it.
Well, actually, we are conducting this interview at the right time. So because the book has just been released, so literally fresh out of the oven, to put it in this way. So this is my third book, but my second solo book. So after the Down the Milky Way and Nexus Haiku, my second solo collection, The Lifelines. Well, first of all, I have to say that I was really lucky and privileged to have a number of collaborators during the creation of the book. And it's very important, they're all friends, very dear people, and this is how I also like to collaborate with others. And they're all accomplished authors themselves. So Michael Dudley, who is a renowned Canadian haiku poet, who was also your guest as well. He wrote the blurb and he helped with some English proofreading just in case. Ikuyo Yoshimura, the Japanese scholar and haiku poet and translator, she translated the poems in Japanese and wrote a nice blurb as well. Nina Kovacic, who is one of the most prominent Croatian haiku poets, also writes beautifully. She wrote the foreword. Thierry Dubois, a French artist, a friend as well, who made the illustrations, and Matija Plavinic, who did the cover design, and Sanela Pliško, who was the co-editor, who helped me with a second kind of perspective on the poems. And the publisher, that's also important, is Tondak, which is an association from Pula, which combines music and poetry programs on an international level as well. So I'm talking all about people who are in this kind of world, surrounded by me. So and that was really important for me. The book itself is divided, as I did with the previous one, in 4 parts, and all 4 parts are named after the first line of one of the poems, which is included in that chapter. And since I like this kind of circularity, so in life generally, I try to order the poems also in this kind of way. First of all, atmospherically and chronologically, according to a kind of a vibe or feel or associations, which means and all of the 4 parts are in a way, at least I think so, related to the 4 kind of major stages of life. So the part 1 is lifelines, which includes associations to birth, beginning, naivety, and so on. The second part is called breath of air, which is mostly related to youth, development, strength, life, first love, and so on, and security. The third part is coexistence, and it's the part I suppose the 2 of us are living right now, which is kind of knowledge, maturity, which also includes uncertainty, crisis, and things like that. And the final part, the closure, which is not the closure in a literal sense, includes poems with related to melancholy, wisdom, calm, but also end and transience, circularity. So this was how I kind of liked to order them. But a very major and important element is that in each of the 4 parts, there are 3 points who are especially stressed, and I try to graphically stress them in this case in italics and in other fonts. and they're related to the death of both of my parents, who passed away in a short time between 2019 and 2022, during the peak of the existence of those poems. So, and actually, I dedicated this book to my late parents, as I dedicated the first book to my family, my wife and two kids. So the element of transience and death is actually, as a natural integral part of life, is something which is really important, and that's why the poems that I chose to read, as you will see and hear, are actually directly related to those elements related to the parents and parenthood and and death and transience, but life goes on and so on.
This is very true. Hard as it is at the time, life does go on.
Yes, that's how it is. Yeah, that's how it is. Just like the sakura. Now you're here and then you're there, or not. But that's normal, and but also I have to mention the element related to that, since it was related to very severe diseases, and it was not only something that unfortunately they had to go through, but also the rest of the family, my brother and me, and then of course my kids, and since we live in the same house, so and it was quite a tough time to see how they were. I can't find the correct word, how they were slowly leaving, because due to illness, and how they were reshaped into something that they weren't before, and it took some time to to recover from this, and a haiku actually those poems helped me a lot, and in a way, although this sounds maybe weird, it was a kind of chronology of their departure in a way, and the aftermath of it as well.
Yeah, I can sort of understand where you're coming from. I didn't lose my parents in short order, so there were many years between losing one and then losing the other. But I think it's been 20 years since I lost the first one. I'm just about ready to write about that now. Nowhere near ready to write about the losing my second parent, which is only, I think it's coming up 2 years now. So for me, it wasn't necessarily a cathartic experience being able to write about that particular part of life, but by the sounds of it, it was for you. It helped.
Yes, it was. You're also questioning yourself, and then you're getting aware of your age and the time you have in front of you, what you have accomplished. You're looking at your kids, so you're kind of stuck. So it was a moment where I was kind of in a limbo, pretty much lost emotionally, but it made me stronger, and actually I would say I embraced life even more. And I have to stress that these poems don't necessarily mean that I wrote a dark book. I just consciously included, so 3 pieces each. So in the book has 100 poems, so 12 of them are direct references to this period of my life, and they are also inside each cycle, or each part. They are ordered, not one after the other, but in the beginning, in the end, and in the middle. So just like these little punches that life give you every now and then, to remind you that, well, okay, you only live once, so be responsible, be good, be nice, do something good.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I tell you what, I think I read the foreword again, this time by Nina Kovacic.
Kovacic, that's right, yeah.
Hey, I'm not doing too badly today on my name.
Your Croatian is becoming better and better.
Well
done.
I have one name left that you're going to have to do for me, though. But anyway,
all right.
When I was reading, I came across this sentence by Nina, who said, of your writing, you, achieves mood and atmosphere through there you go. See, I was going to get caught here. Through synesthetic connections. Synesthetic. Anyway, people know what I mean. Connections and interweaving of sound, color, scent, taste, and touch in different combinations. And that sort of whetted my appetite. So I've gone and whetted everybody else's appetite. Dejan, no pressure. Let's see if your haiku live up to this wonderful, delicious review.
Thank you. Linije života. Moje ostarjele ruke niz očeva rebra. Linije života. Moje ostarjele ruke niz očeva rebra. Lifelines. My aging hands down father's ribs. Lifelines. My aging hands down father's ribs. Očevo odijelo, kako ga je ostavio za sobom, bez svog mirisa. Očevo odijelo, kako ga je ostavio za sobom, bez svog mirisa. Father's suit, how he left it behind, without his smell. Father's suit, how he left it behind, without his smell. Godišnjica smrti. U ladicama i ormarima tražim odgovor. Godišnjica smrti. U ladicama i ormarima tražim odgovore. Death anniversary. Searching for answers in drawers and cupboards. Death anniversary. Searching for answers in drawers and cupboards. Procvjetalo drvo, progovorilo jezikom pčela. Procvjetalo drvo, progovorilo jezikom pčela. A blossoming tree speaking in bee language. A blossoming tree speaking in bee language. Cikade njeme, postajem svjestan svijeta. Cikade njeme, postajem svjestan svijeta. Cicada's silence, I become aware of the world. Cicada's silent, I become aware of the world. Yes.
I think I don't think these are what did you call them, dark poems at all. I mean, they are poems about life, aren't they? But if people were worried that it was going to be very dark, I think the one about let's see, the blossoming tree speaking in bee language.
Yes, the first three are from these elements that I mentioned before, the opening poem and Lifelines, and also that's also the name of the book.
Yeah.
But the last two are, well, haiku, everyday nature, and these ones are well, related to insects, which I personally find really so interesting creatures. And the one I wrote in bee language, this was also one of these very dear poems to me. And you know, when you experience this kind of flesh, and I was standing below my neighbor's tree, who's got a very tall tree, and this was in the middle of spring, and I wasn't aware of the noise that the insects, the bees mostly, were making, and it's something that you should record, so it has such a large decibels. And the same thing is with the cicadas. So these two are in a way related to this element of sound that a group of insects can make and create, and that this sound is kind of white noise and that you only become aware of it when it isn't there. And I find this really fascinating. And I really love cicadas and crickets, and these are my favorite ones. And after all, my blog is also called Smiling Cricket, so it's not accidental, I would say.
That's very true. I have to tell you, I went for a little walk before we sat down to record this, and it's the time. So we're recording, as you said, we're recording this a little bit early, and the roses are in full bloom. And I came across a whole bank of wild roses, and I stuck my nose in, and then realized from the noise around me, a bit like your trees, that the rose bush was full of bees, absolutely, you know, all over it. It was beautiful, and I have to report I did not get stung, so that was even better. So yes, some lovely, lovely poetry in this book as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I wasn't disappointed as I read through. We haven't given people a huge number of poems because obviously we'd like them to read the book and to buy the book, but I think we've given them enough to see that, yes, you have used this synesthesia to good effect throughout, but just it's a lovely, lovely, lovely book. And I have one poem, again, that I'd really love to hear you read, because as I read through, I thought, oh, this is just so me. So again, you know which one I asked you to read. So would you read it to us, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Korak po korak, blatnjavim čizmama primještam brdo. Korak po korak, blatnjavim čizmama primještam brdo. Step by step, I move the mountain with my muddy boots. Step by step, I move the mountain with my muddy boots. So you like hiking?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, as you sort of have to here, I guess. If you don't like hiking, you're a bit stuck. But yes, I have several pairs of hiking boots for very different situations. And I am well known to be bringing the mountain down to my home on the bottom.
Into the living room.
I draw the line there. I take them off at the but yes, they could well bring the mountain into my living room. But no, they certainly bring the mountain to the front door of my house, so or the back of my car quite often. There you are.
A little souvenir, yes, from the nature. Yes, but that's how it works, and no complaints. No. In my case, only the wife complains, but you know, but I'm trying to leave the mountain outside before we enter the house. It doesn't always work, but.
No, it doesn't always work. You're quite right. Yeah, I won't get you started on the mess I leave outside the door, whether I've been out on the hiking on the hills here or out on my bike. I had a lovely morning's bike ride this morning. It had been raining and the puddles were enormous. So my bike and I veered into the puddles, and we had great fun. So I came back quite muddy all over, let alone my boots. So there you go. Thank you very much for giving me that. And now I know the word for step, korak.
Korak, exactly.
It
sounds like a step, korak, you know.
Yes, korak. It does.
It has this rhythmical kind of feel, yes.
It does. And as I was listening to you read both the English and the Croatian, I'm going back to what you said about growing up in Holland. I was wondering, did your Dutch accent affect the way you speak any of your other languages?
I suppose it did, but I was always questioning myself. But the objectivity comes from the native speaker who listens, and many speakers notice the Dutch accent, slight Dutch accent in my English pronunciation, as I can feel it in the Dutch. So I think it is enrooted somewhere over here. Of course, I will never have the real pure native English, whether American or British pronunciation, but you know, but I can feel this this Dutch little element, because when you listen to Dutch people speaking any other language, they can really it's really difficult for them to lose the accent. So it's something that is innate. And I suppose it's the same case with me, who is a Croatian who spoke Dutch as a first language for 7 years and got back and got confused, and I had to, and took some years time to get back into track to choose, okay, am I here, am I there? Well, now I'm everywhere. So in a way it's difficult to for me to say where your roots are, and I would say my roots are everywhere where I gained some insight and some years of living, which includes Holland, which includes Croatia, and also the part of Croatia where my parents were born, where we used to go to grannies, and that's in Dalmatia, in the southern part of Croatia, on the coast. And I'm here in Istria.
Yes, which is also, I believe, not, well, it is a tourist place, because you're involved in the tourist industry during the summer months. So
yes, Istria is a very interesting region in Croatia. So it's not that big. It's the biggest peninsula, but you know, during the summer it's always busy. But off season, it's a great place to go hiking, to go cycling, to go into nature, and Pula, where we live, is a town with a bit more than 50,000 inhabitants, and in less than 10-15 minutes you're in nature. So nature is a very important element for people who live here. Not only nature as hikers and recreational for it, but also nature, you know, living from nature. So everybody has a little garden, as we do. So I just planted tomatoes and waiting for, and then in the next month or so for them to grow. And so everybody is connected with the soil and earth. So that's really important.
Yeah, that's quite important to me. And yes, I've got my tomatoes planted too. So we'll see. I can't eat them. I'm allergic to them, but I grow them every year.
Just out of spite.
Just my husband, they are in theory my husband's tomatoes, but as I look after them, I feel that they are mine. But yes, I do enjoy getting my hands dirty in the soil, and I suspect that's because 2 generations ago my family were farmers, so maybe that's still with me somewhere in my genes. Thank you very, very much. It's been a real pleasure listening to you read your work again. And I would just say to people, do go to the show notes where I'll put all the details on how to get hold of the book. But before we leave, I want to leave you with a thought that comes from the afterword of Down the Milky Way, which, as you said, Dejan, is written by another Croatian poet, one we know from Poetry P. But I'm going to let you pronounce her name again, Dejan, because I'm going to let this one a hard one.
Yes, her name is Đurđa Vukelić-Rožić, and as I mentioned, she in the last decades she's been one of the most prominent Croatian promoters of haiku poetry, the founding editor of Iris Haiku magazine. She's a wonderful woman. She helped me a lot during my beginnings, and she was also always willing to translate haiku in English for all the newcomers. So always there for everybody to help. So a remarkable, wonderful woman and author and poet.
Indeed, a very good poet. I can agree with you there. And what she said is, for haiku to really be haiku in every sense of the word, built on understanding of the world that has been lived by the poets of the Far East throughout the centuries, and then again being acceptable and understandable to the Western world, created in Croatian, but equally assuring in English. For all this, one has to be a master. And all I can say is, you are definitely a master. And they have been a real treat to listen to. So thank you very much for coming along today and reading to us. It really has been great to see you again.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for the kind words, and most of all for giving me the opportunity to present my work, and also now Lifelines, my fresh new child of haiku poetry book. And many thanks to your audience, to everyone who was listening and watching, and yeah, and that's it. Yes, ciao. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was that a treat? Well, it was for me. Let me know what you thought. You can tell we recorded this a little while ago, although my t-shirt was nice and clean, so I got it out of the wardrobe to wear it specially. My tomatoes, which we were referencing, are now being eaten by my husband, not me. But I'm enjoying the raspberries. I'll let him have one or two. And as for me riding through puddles, well, as you know, I've had a bit of an accident, and those puddles are going to have to wait for a wee while. But I have managed to disguise my black eye and the bruising on my face. It's going down anyway. It's a lovely shade of green. Thanks for joining Dejan and I today. I know he would really love to have some feedback from you. So if you have his email, send it to him. If not, send me some and I'll pass it on. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast with a membership or buy the podcast a coffee, I'm saving to see if I can make it to the west coast of the US next year for the Haiku North America conference. You'll find details on the show notes. All donations gratefully received. Also a reminder that Poetry P Journal Tendrils, that's our Haibun journal, is out. You can purchase it in print form or as a PDF, and as usual, I'll stick the details in the show notes. Next week, I'll have more original poetry for you. We'll hear what poems Linda has chosen from the Poetry P video prompt. Have you added your poems to the prompt this month? You can write as many haiku or senri as you like and leave them in the comments section for Linda to read. So with that reminder, I shall leave you. Until next week, keep writing. And don't forget to check out the show notes for the links in today's podcast. If you need anything, just email me. Ciao.